Everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of the Term 1 Education Webinar Series. My name is Crystal Ryan and I'm the Regional Marketing Manager here at Smart Technologies. I'm here today joined by special guest Nerida McGeechy, and Nerida joins us from Integrate AV where she works as the National Education Manager. Nerida, I might hand over to you if you'd like to tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Crystal. Hello, everyone. Obviously, I'm being introduced, Nerida McGeechy. I am the National Education Manager at Integrate AV, but my history in education is quite extensive. I've had 25 years as an educator in the New South Wales system, in New South Wales schools. 8 years of that was as an educational leader in regional and statewide projects. I managed the integration of technology into Australian classrooms, starting with the connected classrooms and moving into what was known as the digital education revolution. And my final position was the former Deputy Principal in the New South Wales High School here in Sydney. Today I'm looking at SLS as a means of doing homework with students. And as we all know, homework has been the bane of many teachers' lives. It's often seen in isolation. It's seen as busy work sometimes. And we do know if homework is not connected, if it's not meaningful, and if it's not authentic, then students do turn off. Having that collaboration that goes in a classroom is cut off at the end of the lesson. So with the new technology, with the Smart Notebook and the Smart SLS suite where it's gone now, it provides teachers and students with an opportunity to continue their learning. So it's not disrupted, so it can be still engaging and still continue with the development of ideas, the development of skills and knowledge past the classroom, breaking out past those four walls that we get tied into. It can also be a safe environment, however, even in a collaborative one, such as we will show with workspaces, and students can in that environment share and evolve their own learning, and it becomes also one where the teacher can guide and see how things are being done at home with their students. And students, of course, can use their peers to help and support them. Basically, however, whatever you do, it has to be incorporated in what we understand as the Australian curriculum now. We have certain standards, we have certain outcomes that we have to achieve. The general capabilities that cover or transcend every curriculum, regardless of KLA, regardless of stages, have creative and critical thinking as being extremely important, ethical understanding, intercultural understanding, civic citizenship. It goes through all of them, regardless of the stage of development. However, obviously, the complexity of any of those can be developed from stage 1 right through to stage 6, and it is evident in all of our syllabuses. The one I'd like to concentrate on today is the geography sort of section. However, as I said, it does transcend all subject areas. With the ones I'm looking at today, I want to focus on ethical understanding and intercultural understanding. And what I want to focus, because of the time of the year we're looking at that at the moment, I want to look at Easter. And believe it or not, I can look at Easter from a perspective of stage 1 right through to stage 6, depending, of course, on what subject your area, how you actually incorporate that into your students' learning. The different stages of learning obviously become more complex as the concepts become so as well. We can look from pagan festivals in Christianity and the meaning of all that, right down to your bunnies and your chocolate Easter eggs. So in other words, we can look at stage 1 at the meaning of Easter bunnies, Easter eggs, and where it all sits in terms of our society. We could go a little bit further beyond our early stage 1 into stage 2 and 3 and possibly 4, where we're looking at the meaning of Easter and the festival attitudes that come with that Easter festivities. Moving even higher, perhaps we could look into stage 5 and even into stage 6, we're looking at the religious symbolism of Easter and where that sits in terms of understanding the Christian's interpretation as opposed to pagan interpretation, Judaism, Greek Orthodox. There are so many areas that you can develop within the context of society and culture, history, geography, many. And of course, as I say, from stage 1 right through to stage 6. So having a look at this today, in particular, as a teacher, I need to establish my students' prior knowledge. I have to understand where my learners are at within my classroom. And to do that, there's lots of different ways you can use the Smart Learning Suite to capture that. With that, then I can move them into more learning. I could talk about the origins of Easter if I was looking at the history syllabus, or I could look at the origins of Easter in terms of society and culture, and guiding the students of their knowledge as well as their understanding, and obviously the skill sets that they need to be able to interpret some of that. And then, of course, what does Easter mean to you and your family and your friends, and put that into context. Generally speaking, your knowledge and understanding as a stage 1 is quite concrete, as you know. Moving into your stage 6, your conceptual understanding becomes less concrete, more abstract. So obviously the content you're developing within the framework of your age group will be from your very concrete, this is Easter, this is what it's about, Easter bunnies, all the rest of it goes with it, through to the conceptual understanding of why people believe in the Christian religion in terms of the rebirth and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. So students get the opportunity to develop their intercultural understanding as they learn the value of their own cultures, language and belief. If we're looking at something like this, they can understand the variable and changing nature of culture. If looking at Easter, where it's come from and where it's developed, we see how that's changed over many years. And we also then, most importantly, engage the students with an understanding and a respect of other cultures and other community beliefs. And that's extremely important, particularly in Australian schools today. Moving on then, how do I do this? Establishing prior learning is extremely important. We can do it quite simply by capturing it in a discussion situation. We can look at lead up to Easter, Easter Sunday, pre-Easter, post-Easter. We could look at traditions. We could look at ceremonies. Perhaps that could be done at a very simple level right through to a much more complex level. Of course, my dice will roll all over things. We could look at food, the sorts of foods that we eat. Fish being very important for some of the traditional celebrations, and of course family and where all that sits. Capturing that data can be a simple discussion in class, or we may well like to use the monster quiz as a way of obtaining that understanding. Now, I've just set this up before, and I'm actually going to start it with the monster quiz, and I have got a colleague of mine sitting with me, and I believe Kathy's sitting there right now. I can bring people in. I can divide them into teams. In this case, I've only got Kathy sitting there with that team. Oh, I've got now 2. Okay, I have 2 students participating. I could run a 1 team or 2 team. If I have more students, I can actually add the teams in that. But at the moment, because I've only got 2, you can see how it breaks up. The students get in. I start my quiz. And there is a whole heap of questions behind us the students are doing on their own devices, where they can actually give me the information I need as a teacher to understand where my students' learning is at, what they actually understand Easter to be, where they know or where they've got that actually from, their understanding of paganism, their understanding of a whole heap of things if that's what they choose to be doing. Often students have come from earlier stages, different schools, all sorts of different cultural backgrounds, and me understanding where they're at and where I should be taking each individual learner is extremely important. I'm just going to end that quiz now. Sorry, girls and boys. But with that, then I can review my information, which I won't go into now, but it's just to show you some of that because we are moving into, obviously, the homework stage. Bringing it back, if I had covered some of this in my lesson, I may well now like to make it a more personal situation. I've gathered the information. Perhaps I've even had a journey with my students in terms of understanding the origins of Easter. I now will bring it back to that level where I'm asking my students, what does it actually mean to you? Hopefully we've set up a nice, safe environment where those students now can start to give me that. With a shout out, it becomes even more encompassing. Those shy students in the classroom now have an opportunity to speak. When I start an activity like this, start a new activity. When I start something like this, Blair and Kathy can start to add their thoughts about what Easter is. Hopefully they're bringing in some of that prior learning, which I've sparked off again and reinitiated some of what their knowledge is, brought it from the back of their brain to their front. And now they're being able to give me an understanding of what it actually means to their personal interior, what it means for them as a family member, what it means to them as a class member from all that they've learned. That again is capturing, or as a formative assessment almost, in terms of as they're learning and of their learning, we're putting it together. And as teachers, that's very important to be able to direct where we want them to go in the future. Looking at all of this then, knowing my lesson's about to end, knowing that I do not want to close down on this very important part that I'm developing with my students. They're engaged, they're now giving me opinions of themselves. Nothing like giving the student the floor, particularly in something where it's a safe environment. We want them to continue on with that. This would be where my homework task would become very important. I want to make sure that my students will come back tomorrow in my class with this implanted, embedded in their learning psyche, and we can continue it further. I could do it in class. Sorry, I will pause that one. Sorry, I will go back and pause that. I want them to come back into class. I want them to have had that opportunity. Pause that. I want them to come back and bring more to the table. And how can they do that? If they're going home with their family, they'll be able to talk with them. That's a great thing. But then to collaborate back with their peers, even before they come back into my classroom. I could do it in a simple way where I could give them the old-fashioned worksheet. Great. But how about we use what we know now is a very effective tool in our SMART suite of learning. We have got our SLS online, and with this we can make a workspace where students can get this worksheet, if you like, your old-fashioned butcher paper, and move it into the digital space and get them to contribute on the butcher's paper in their own homes, regardless of the fact they're not sitting side by side in the classroom sharing crayons and pencils or pens and their devices. So here you can see I've brought back a series of what I've just been doing in class, but what I want to concentrate on here, and I have done this before to be able to demonstrate to you, but we'll give you an opportunity to do it yourself as well. We've got our quizzes, we've got our shout outs all in there so the students can reflect back on what they've done in the classroom. But I'm also going to show you the workspace. This one, as I said, I have actually prepared so that at least you can have a look and see modelled up what it looks like from an earlier sitting with some colleagues. So workspace 1, I had 3 students sitting in that. They've been given that grouping, and I can choose that the same as I did with the monster game. You saw that in action. I can actually split the students up in according to what I know, and it can be 2, 3, 4, 5 groups. This particular group went home. They've added what they see as the meaning of Easter to them in Australia. I would give them instructions, of course. They would be accessing their cultural heritage, perhaps, their belief systems from home, and adding to that a safe space, and one, of course, still directed and monitored by myself as the teacher to ensure that it is a respectful place for all my students. So that was one group. My other group, my team 2, also adding the meanings of what Easter is to them, everything from obviously spring, which is where it obviously originated in its pagan roots, through to the fact, of course, we're in Australia, so where is it? Autumn, spring, etc. So we're getting a real understanding of what they believe is their Easter and what their families, cultural groups, ethnic groups, and religious beliefs are behind that. All very important, but then continue it on to the next day, I'd be able to bring it back into the classroom. Very important as a teacher, which I'll go to in a moment. So coming back in there, just to revise where it is, I've come back into my workspaces and I have made a workspace here for them. To show you how to do this, it's just the same once you've imported it. You can, in fact, like I've done here, let's just say it's a different type of sheet. If I did want to bring this in as a workspace, it's a very easy process. You click on your collaborative workspace activity, and on the fly, because at the end of a lesson it may well be that I have not had an opportunity to finish, and that's where I'd like them to be guided to at the end. I can set my teams up as I'm showing you there, and then I can start my workspaces. And again, I can see what's going on in these spaces as the students are doing it, and see it, make sure they're being respectful, of course, which is always a concern with obviously teachers, making sure that their students are using the time with their peers in a most appropriate way. All right. Coming back then, once those workspaces have been, there we are, fasting. Thank you. We've got a couple happening in here. I can go in and out and see what's going on here. Obviously, this is happening in real time. If, however, the bell has gone, I do have to leave my classroom, I can go out of this, and coming back onto my home page, I've kicked everybody out now, but of course I want them to continue this for homework. It's a very easy process. I just come back in, I get the shared link, I copy this link, and I would put that into my Google Classroom, if that what I was using, or whatever learning management system the school has in place, and that then will kick out to the students that were originally put into those teams within their collaborative groups. They cannot change, they've been put into those, and they can continue that at home. Bringing it all back into the classroom the next day, of course, I would have the opportunity to have had a look and seen what they've done for homework. I don't have to walk around and see books. I don't have to get the dirty butcher's paper out. I don't have to ensure that one group has not been respectful of another group. I can see that prior to entering into it, and I'm prepared. The students are prepared. We've had a collaborative opportunity, and now we can actually cement that learning. We can consolidate where we are now so that we can gauge where our students, and the students themselves make their own visible learning, we can gauge where they're going to move in the future. So the significance of homework, and just to bring it back to why I started where I did and where I've gone with it, it has to be connected, it has to be authentic, and it has to be engaging for them to continue in that homework environment, and to ensure that that continuation is extremely important, and the SLS does provide that opportunity, and particularly in this case where I've been using Workspace in a collaborative way. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of exactly how you can use this type of SLS in practice in the classroom. I know probably some of these areas you may well need to look at in a little bit more in depth. So if there's anything that we can help you with in the future, please make sure you contact us. I've got up there now a slide showing you our contact details there. Anything in terms of understanding the SLS we can teach you and help you with and support you with in the classroom. Anybody who needs to understand how they can purchase it, of course, either their own personal use or from a school's perspective as a teacher, if you do need that support, please reach out to us at education@integrateav.com.au, and one of my education consultants, or myself, of course, will answer you and get back to you as soon as possible and provide you with that support. Thank you.
Thanks, Nerida. That was fantastic. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining us today. Join us the same place, same time next week as we look at key concepts of media arts within the classroom. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.